everyone, and welcome back to the visual dynamics of Upper Paleolithic art. I'm Julia, and today we're following on from our last episode, where we talked all about why humans, and especially those Upper Paleolithic artists, were so captivated by animals. But there's an even deeper layer we need to get into. The idea that early human communities didn't just see animals as important for survival or as symbols, but often as spirited, animate beings with some kind of agency. This is what's known as animism. Now, animism, you might have heard that word thrown around, usually as a sort of catch-all for primitive religion in anthropology. But if we dig a bit deeper, it's more nuanced. Scholars like Tyler kicked things off by saying animism is this belief that everything, animals, rocks, rivers, thunder, has a soul or spirit. But thinkers like Hallowell and Bird David went a step further, arguing that animism is actually a perceptual outlook, not just a belief, that humans live in community with other than human persons, as Hallowell put it. So not just people or animals, but certain rocks or landmarks could be seen as intentional, even relational beings. And the really interesting bit is how neuroscience and psychology are now showing that we seem to be wired for this tendency to see agency all over the place. Guthrie, for example, described it as hypersensitive agent detection, basically because it was safer during evolution to wrongly think a rustle in the grass was something alive rather than risk ignoring an actual predator. Our brains are tuned to spot movement, intention, and life, even where there might be none. So, this kind of perceptual filter, this constant scanning for agency, is an adaptation that kept us alive, and maybe, just maybe, is the foundation for animistic thinking. This reminds me of times from my own childhood, maybe you can relate, where I was afraid to destroy a photo of someone I cared about, like it would affect the actual person. It's an odd feeling, isn't it? And it turns out that's pretty universal. Across all sorts of cultures, people are uneasy about damaging images of loved ones because the emotional and perceptual parts of the brain overlap so much. Images just feel alive. So even now, we kind of operate with a bit of animism baked in, without even noticing. This sets the stage for thinking about ancient art, not just as decoration or even storytelling, but as a real engagement with an animated world where everything might be alive or possessed of some kind of intent. And yeah, that totally changes how we look at those animals dancing across cave walls. So if we've got this built-in tendency to animate the world, what does that mean for the things we make? The art, the objects, those images left behind in caves? Well, psychologically and neurologically, it's actually quite astounding. When we look at a painted animal or a carved face, the same areas of our brain fire up as when we encounter the real thing. Koslin and Schachter's research shows that the brain regions activated for seeing, remembering, or even just imagining an animal overlap a great deal. That means a convincing image isn't just a symbol or a code. It evokes genuine emotion, genuine response. Then there's the concept of what Derek Hodgson and Patricia Helvenston called hyper-images. These aren't just mental pictures. They're emotionally supercharged images we project onto the world, especially onto objects or sites with cultural significance. Think of famous examples like the Sleeping Maiden of Mount Timpanogos in Utah, where entire communities came to see the profile of a woman, or the Old Man of the Mountain in New Hampshire, a rocky cliff face people deeply mourned when it finally collapsed. These aren't just neat resemblances, they're focal points for collective feelings and myth, reinforced by how our brains process shape, emotion and memory as one tangled experience. And it's not just in our heads either. Neuroscience has uncovered these things called mirror neurons. Basically, when we watch a movement or even see it depicted, some of the same brain circuits fire as if we're performing that movement ourselves. So, if you look at a horse galloping in a cave painting, your motor brain is partially recruited, and without conscious intent, you can kind of feel the animal's liveliness. We're not just looking at these images, we're, in some sense, feeling them move, sharing in their energy. In that sense, Upper Paleolithic art isn't static at all. The act of seeing the art is participatory. Viewers might feel the tension of a bison about to leap, or the gaze of a lion staring back. The boundary between representation and presence blurs. And when you blend that with a worldview where everything might have its own agency or spirit, it's no wonder these images were so emotionally potent. This interplay between how we perceive, how we project emotion, and the memories associated with objects really helps explain why images, especially those in caves, were, and maybe still are, powerful, almost animate presences for those who encountered them. Our brains are, in a way, animist machines, constantly bringing the world to life. Now, let's go one step further, beyond just what's seen, to ask about where and how these images existed. Why caves? Why these specific places and not others? Turns out it's not just about the visual. There's a really fascinating dimension to the cave environment, the role of sound. Researchers like Waller have shown that echoes, reverberations, what he calls hypersounds, would have transformed these spaces. And across the world, you find traditions where echoes and mysterious noises, like those deep within caves, were interpreted as the voices or presences of spirits. In fact, studies on Mayan ritual caves and even among the Siami and Australian Aboriginal traditions show that the sounds of wind, water, or even your own voice bouncing back were meaningful, more than just acoustic quirks. These were signs of a living, interactive environment. Waller noticed that at sites like Lascaux, areas with the strongest echoes often have the highest concentrations of animal images, especially animals like bison or horses whose thundering herds might be evoked by those deep, rumbling sounds. Coincidence? Maybe, but it's so widespread that it really seems linked to how people perceived caves as alive. But there's more to place than just echoes. Animism shaped where art was placed, which landmarks were chosen, and even how human and animal features blended together in art. Just look at the fish-human boulders of Lepensky Vir, or therianthrope figures combining traits from multiple animals, or animals and humans. These hybrids weren't just fantasies. They reflected a worldview where boundaries between categories, human, animal, spirit, were fluid, crossable. Rituals, emotional arousal, even the feeling of awe in a dramatic landscape, all these could amplify the sense that spirits were really present. You know, it's a bit like that shiver you get visiting a powerful or ancient site today. Something is happening on both a sensory and emotional level, and it adds a layer of meaning to what's being seen and heard. Did ancient people experience these places the way we do? I mean, in some ways maybe, though their animistic framework might have made those experiences even more vivid and numinous. So, bringing it all together, the cave art and the objects left behind aren't just windows into ancient minds. They're evidence of a world where meaning was animated through sight, sound, emotion, and ritual. Next time you stumble on a strike in rock formation or catch your voice bouncing back in a cave, spare a thought for the kind of living, spirited world our ancestors inhabited, and maybe, on some level, that we still carry with us today.